computers? Oh, mine's not even on.
Is it on?
Yeah. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Let's see if I can do this one more time. Now is the time that I will call to order the City of Apache Junction's Planning and Zoning Commission. It is just a wee bit after 7 o'clock on Tuesday, October 27th, 2020. And if everyone would join me, please, in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call vote, please, Rudy.
Commissioner McGraw. Here. Chairwoman Nesser.
Present.
Commissioner Hanchey. Here. Vice Chair Heck.
Present.
All members present. We have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. And can I have a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the agenda as presented and approve the minutes from the September 8th, 2020 and September 22nd, 2020 regular meetings.
We have a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner McGraw.
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser.
Yes.
Commissioner Hanchey.
Yes.
Vice Chair Heck.
Yes.
So moved, Madam Chair.
It doesn't look like we're going to have any public hearings or any old business, so we'll move on to new business. And the only item is the presentation, discussion, and update on the Affordable Housing Assessment and Strategic Plan prepared by the Drachman Institute in 2010.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Larry Kirsch, Director of Development Services. I just wanted to give a short introduction here. Tonight we're going to hear from Kendra Elner. She's an ASU, one of our interns right now, a graduate student in the Urban Environmental Planning program at Arizona State. And we were asked by a council member who's interested in affordable housing. They had gotten a question from a constituent who found this study, reference to the study on the website. So this study was conducted in 2010. And the nature of the request was, what has the city done since 2010? So it's kind of an unusual item, really, perhaps to come back to the Plan Commission, but it is going to go to the council on either Monday, November 16th at a work session, or Tuesday night regular council meeting on the 17th. So the context is what have been the accomplishments. There were some recommendations in there. And so Heather Patel had been the one that worked on the study back in the day in 2010. And so since she doesn't work here anymore, we've been kind of going back and forth and trying to get more information about why was it done, what were the outcomes, et cetera, et cetera. So this may be a little bit of a dress rehearsal before we go to the council meeting, so there's no action being taken tonight. But that's just a quick background, and Kendra's going to elaborate on that, and I'll get the presentation up. And then you can have any discussion or ask any questions after.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Kendra Elner, and I'm a planning intern here. And I'm going to present the City of Apache Junction Housing Assessment and Strategic Plan 10 years later. So as Larry said, tonight's presentation was inspired by a constituent interested in learning more about Apache Junction's efforts for affordable housing after they found this Drachman study on the city's website. So this is what it looks like. And the planning staff were recommended to present an evaluation from the study's recommendations to the Commission and Council about the city's achievements for affordable housing in the past decade since the study was conducted. So the Apache Junction Housing Assessment and Strategic Plan was funded by a grant from the Arizona Department of Housing and conducted by the Drachman Institute, an organization of planning and architecture housed by the University of Arizona. And the Institute assessed demographic and land use data to recommend solutions towards affordable housing. Data was collected through physical, statistical, and existing reports that found evidence of AJ's varying affordable housing conditions. From the findings and recommendations, they explored suggestions for improving affordable housing options through housing programs and community-based strategies. So examining the existing reports for Apache Junction support a historical context of how affordable housing is impacted by the lack of public transit. Evidently, from the Pinal County Transit Feasibility Study shown on the left, indicated that the city has no regional transit plans and the closest stop is over 10 miles away. The most current Valley Metro light rail extensions map that is shown in the middle depicts that there is currently no future proposed east expansion. In order to increase density, which supports the use of public transportation, Apache Junction created downtown redevelopment and implementation strategy to help the city focus on infill development, hoping to prepare for future transit uses. People who live in affordable housing often do not have personal vehicles, and transit is one of the key components for benefiting these populations. Through the 3 data collection methods, the Institute's findings concluded that Apache Junction's median income is the lowest among Maricopa and Pinal counties. It is because many people are employed outside the city and there is a seasonal population influx in the winter months, making affordable housing a more desirable and which is why many mobile homes make up a high percentage of Apache Junction's housing stock. Since there are very limited public transit options, it impacts the quality and regulation of housing affordability. These findings led the Drachman Institute to recommend the city to develop and explore housing and community-based strategies. So it's been 10 years since this study was conducted, and we reviewed the accomplishments that Apache Junction has achieved after these recommendations were presented. The first recommendation was to create a repair and replacement program for manufactured homes. Within the decade, the city did develop a repair and rehabilitation program for manufactured home using home federal dollars through HUD, which is an investment partnership, repairing about 11 homes a year. There was never an implementation of a replacement program, but the home funds allowed the repair program to provide forgivable loans to homeowners. Since HUD prohibits the use of federal dollars on pre-HUD mobile homes, this was only utilized on homes 1977 or later. Another achievement outcome from the recommended repair and replacement program was a catalyst to an additional housing study under full city provisions, and it involved the entire community to be included for graphic illustrations and entered into the Microsoft Access database, where the information was determined which neighborhoods should be included in the Strong Sustainable Communities Initiative. With assistance of the Economic Development Director, the housing assessment was updated in 2018-2019 with help of community members who converted the data to GIS format. In relation to the Strong Sustainable Communities from the city-initiated housing assessment inspired by the Drachman study, it sparked discussions on redevelopment for another housing project in 2017, where the city received Community Development Block Grants, or CDBGs, from HUD, or the Federal Organization of Housing and Urban Development, to acquire 2 vacant lots and 1 with an older mobile home to rehabilitate. Apache Junction partnered with Habitat for Humanity to build quality and affordable housing that included 3 new homes on these 3 lots. The city's former program and resource manager is credited to coordinating most of these housing achievements. Our second recommendation for housing was to partner with the Arizona Community Action Association, or the Community Action Human Resource Agency, or CARA, to assist low-income residents in weatherization repairs, which provides funds for protection against weather damages. Unfortunately, there's been little presence and collaboration between these organizations because there's a waiting list for applicants, stalling any progress for residents. Our third recommendation for housing was to administer a homeowner workshop to assist and inform residents about how they can go about improving their housing conditions. A few years ago, Apache Junction Revenue Development staff did create a seminar for new homeowners in the community teaching them budgeting and repair tips. Unfortunately, the program has been discontinued because of low staffing, though the city continues to publish a quarterly newsletter with homeowner maintenance guides, which can be found on its website. Our last recommendation for improving affordable housing included expanding the supply of affordable housing rentals through incentives and inclusive zoning. Apache Junction was able to leverage low-income housing tax credits to establish 2 affordable housing projects through Apache Junction Townhomes and AJ Villas, developing 141 units total. This was a great accomplishment, but for communities like AJ, financial incentives such as waiving of building permit fees, development impact fees, applying for federal CDBGs, or home dollars are not readily feasible. As for community accomplishments in the decade, the Drachman Institute suggested for Apache Junction to plan for incentives and develop partnerships for transit-oriented development. The city did receive a proposal for a transit route along Brown from Sossaman to Ironwood into the city in 2018-2019. That plan did not come to fruition because the city lacked a financial means of $250,000. The city was not able to take advantage of the Federal Transit Administration's funding for public transit prior to 2010 through the Rural 5311 program, which would have had the federal government covering 90% of capital projects, 80% of administration costs, and 58% of operating assistance. It would have been extremely beneficial for establishing public transit, but Apache Junction is no longer under the rural designation for these projects, and the city has to go through MAG, or the Maricopa Association of Governments, which will only cover a certain percentage of capital costs and no operating assistance, which is not feasible for the city at this time. In June 2012, ADOT funded the Apache Junction Transit Feasibility Study update, providing additional comments or recommendations to transit options for the city in the future, but more than likely it will take another decade or 2 to establish a better plan for public transit in this area. Our second recommendation for community strategies is to improve streets and increase connectivities for other transit modes. Apache Junction adopted an active transportation plan in 2019 that provided more complete streets for walking, biking, and horseback riding. So our last community recommendation was to encourage governmental participation in forming neighborhood associations. Apache Junction was able to establish a strong sustainable community initiative and identified 4 to 5 neighborhoods where the city has invested the resources for community surveys, neighborhood cleanups, installation of neighborhood lighting, and more to bolster AJ's neighborhoods. Through sustainability interns from the ASU School of Sustainability, additional community resources have been added to the website, such as the 14-step engagement process. There is also the Apache Junction Community Development Corporation Make a Difference Day, which is scheduled once a year, where members of the community volunteer and clean up non-conforming properties and beautify other parts of the city. 3 weeks ago, Make a Difference Day efforts included cleaning up behind Focal Point and Silly Mountain Park Botanical Walk. And last year, 3 residential lots and major improvements of landscaping were done on Apache Trail, as well as the Think Desert Walkway at Flatiron Park. Credits to the Park and Recreation Department, Public Works Department, the CDC, and the community volunteers, but there's been less luck in creating neighborhood associations. So Apache Junction is continuously trying to advance affordable housing initiatives. According to the 2020 General Plan, there are 4 objectives to improve affordable housing, and they include creating policies regarding manufactured and mobile home use and redevelopment, diversifying housing stock in neighborhoods by incorporating a variety of housing types and associated values to allow for a diverse demographic of residents, maintain and attract a quality housing stock in condition, design, and construction standards, and incorporate sustainable practices in all housing developments. So for example, shown here is a recent housing study that was rehabilitated in AJ and is credited to Judge Hazel and Community Development Corporation for their efforts. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
So, Kendra, is there, is there anywhere in all the study or that what you accomplished here that says exactly how much more affordable housing do we need? Do we need another 200? Do we need 2,000 units?
Yeah.
You know, I'm just not sure. I mean, I understand, and to my delight, the townhomes and the villas, they're beautiful communities, they're being well maintained, but I don't know if, 140, whatever, 149, whatever.
Yeah.
Is there a number out there that we should be seeking?
The study actually does not state how much affordable housing you guys need. That is,
Yeah, I could, so part of this study, it did not look at, and there's a bunch of data here. This study is online, and we can certainly make copies available. I think there's an assumption that because 65% of our housing stock is mobile homes, manufactured homes, park models, that we have affordable housing. So that may be the case, but when you look at our income, meeting that first slide or that second slide that talks about, I think it's 38,000 roughly is our median, I think it's household income.
Yeah.
So folks are only supposed to spend up to 30% of their income on housing. So housing becomes unaffordable if they're spending more than the 30%. But when you have an income of less than $40,000, then you're probably putting a higher proportion of your income towards housing than you should. And that can go for any income strata too. So affordable, that's kind of a standard rule of thumb. 30% of your household income should go to housing or individual income. When you start exceeding that, so there is no number that would say X number of households or we're short X number of units. That's something that, part of this too was the original Drachman report didn't do a housing condition survey. It was pretty broad, and so the city, along with community volunteers, did a housing quality inventory, which really led to the creation of the Apache Trail Redevelopment District and those 4 or 5 neighborhoods where we spent a lot of block grant resources. So it really identified some of those areas needing additional federal resources, curb, gutter, sidewalk. That's where we've tried to target our housing rehabilitation program. But nowhere in this, and it's not really in our current housing element, like, how many units, you hear stories now that nationwide we need 1 million more units or something like that, because that's why we have such a high homeless population that is out there today. So perhaps that would be, area for further study or to try to hone in on, how many units do we currently have that could be considered affordable, and then what is the demand or need for that?
That, in listening to this, my question is, tell me again why this is coming back up again now, 10 years later.
It was a constituent talked to a council member, and the council member wanted to put it on the Apache Junction City Council meeting. So we brought it here first, just again to help us get practiced, if you will, for the council meeting.
Okay.
But it came up because someone found it on the city website and said, what are we doing for affordable housing here in AJ? So the first look was what did the report say? What were the findings? What were the recommendations of the report? Of those recommendations, have we acted on any of them? So that's all we're trying to, we're not trying to give a comprehensive view of affordable housing. We were relating it back to the specific question of what did the Drachman report do? What did it say? What were its findings? What were its recommendations? Has the city made any progress, if you will, towards making housing more affordable? So I think on the housing, perhaps some of the community development, corporation issues, strong sustainable communities initiative, the city has done a lot. The city has had a housing rehabilitation program for a long time. The city just hasn't come up with a program to replace older, outdated manufactured homes or mobile homes. In terms of transit, there was a proposal by a state senator last year that we referenced here that came in and talked to the council that was going to say, hey, we can get you transit, we'll put it in the state budget. You know, I question why was it on Brown? Why wouldn't you do it on Apache Trail? But there is an existing route on University that ends at Sossaman, and you would bring it, I think the proposal was to bring it to Ironwood. Well, it might make more sense to have transit along Apache Trail where there's more commerce and things like that. So again, the city might be able to have transit, like a circulator within the city, but transit has been tried 3 times here in the city. It's always been perceived as a way to export shoppers outside the city, and so the city relies on sales tax, so why would we have a transit system that would take folks to Superstition Springs Mall? But at the same time, transit inside the city, a circulator, which has been also talked about, could be feasible that would take folks, and again, you'd have to start small, usually a dial-a-ride service where you call and say, I need a ride on Thursday, or a circulator where we're bringing folks to the senior meals program. But funding is still an issue. And really what we've learned, what I've learned, is that prior to the 2010 census, the city was considered rural. We were part of CAG, Central Arizona Association of Governments, and we could get transit funding through the rural program, the 5311 program. Coolidge has transit because they got rural transit funding. So if we had started a transit system before 2010, we could not only get money to buy buses, but we could get partial money to operate them. So then we move into the CAG region, the MAG region, Maricopa Association of Governments, their transit policy, their funding in a urban area, in a large metro area, they only fund transit capital. Yeah. They don't fund any operating assistance. However, if we had started a transit system under CAG, come into MAG, we could have brought those operating dollars with us. So in the MAG region, there's only monies to buy buses, but not to operate them. And that's kind of so did the city lose an opportunity? Maybe we didn't have the wherewithal prior to 2010 either, but had we started a transit system, we could have brought both capital dollars and operating dollars, especially the operating dollars, with us into MAG, and then we could have had more. Could have paid 80% of the buses. So that's why we don't have a transit system. We don't have the population density either, and that's what all the studies show, is you have to have density. We certainly have a population need, I think, for transit, and again, maybe it's some start of or it's an earmark, maybe it's a congressional, federal earmark to get transit started. That happens sometimes too, but to tie us to a bus that's 8 miles away is less important than having transit within the community right now, I think so. But it could certainly benefit elderly, disabled, et cetera.
Yeah. Okay, that leads me to my second question, Larry, which is, a constituent brought this issue to a council member and wants to see basically what have we been doing in 10 years.
They have an interest in affordable housing. What have we been doing in the last year?
For whatever reason. Is it, what's the word? How am I want to put it this? This is a 10-year-old study. It might not even apply to today, 10 years later. I don't know how much it applies or doesn't apply to us. And as you said, it doesn't go into the detail in giving us, we don't know 10 years ago how many units did we need, and maybe today we have everything that we need. We don't know. So should we be going on a 10-year-old study that we don't know where it stands today to tell us what we're lacking in?
I think this is where you go today anyway. We were just responding to the request, and that's what we did.
Okay.
In terms of the value of, right, in terms of the value of the study, or whether the study could have done more at the time. Sometimes these studies are limited by resources and then, who's doing the work, et cetera. So I think where we should go from here, in my opinion, is to take what we have in the general plan. And because these are just the goal areas, and I know that Kendra kind of read a little bit more into this, but then there's more objectives and things. That's where we should talk about what we can do. So it's not just housing, but it is, the way the element is titled is neighborhood preservation, revitalization, and housing. So again, we still have many areas of the city that are low and moderate income, where we are trying to put as much federal resources as we can with the block grant money. We put in sidewalk, curb, gutter, lighting in some areas along, 4th Avenue and Grand, Ocotillo, Maine. Those neighborhoods still need work and need strategies to take some of these old aging, and we have another study that we did with ASU with a graduate student on aging mobile homes. That study is still perfectly good. It's referenced, in the plan, in the general plan. So I think that's okay. Again, we were just responding to a request to say, what have we done in the last 10 years?
Madam Chair.
And I think we've done a lot, but
Yeah,
there's more we could
Sounds
do.
like, though, what we need to be telling city, or recommending to city council is the more current information is what's in the general plan, and just because we have an old 10-year-old study, it doesn't, we don't even know how valid it is, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Mike?
There is a line in here, which I don't see on these excellent points on this PowerPoint right here, that says affordable housing is impacted by the lack of public transit. So to help you in your discussion with council, maybe that should be one of those points that we need to look at. The public transit's part of this, as well as those other 4 points that you showed earlier, those goals.
Madam Chair,
Yep.
what, were you done, Matt? Okay. So these recommendations that were from this presentation, were they recommendations that you have come up with as a result of looking back at that, or these recommendations that were?
They were in the study.
They were in the study, so
Yeah.
there's really nothing new that we've gleaned from this.
Yeah, for example, recommendation, repair and replacement program for manufactured homes. That was a recommendation of the study. The city has had a housing rehabilitation program for a long time. We do conventional homes and we do manufactured homes. We don't do the ones that might need it the most, which are the pre-1976 ones. But then I think from a policy standpoint, those homes were never built to any standard. So is it good to kind of throw good money after bad? But at the same time, then what do you do with those units? You haven't really solved an issue, except
Besides, you're expecting people to live in them, though, too.
Yeah, exactly. So you have something that was never built to a code. It's limping along, and now we're going to go rehabilitate it. What the building code says, though, if you do so much work, you really have to build it back to a single-family code. You have to use the International Residential Code. So we do have folks very rarely, I think we've had 1 or 2 this year, where they've taken a mobile home, pre-1976 unit, and they've essentially rebuilt it as a single-family home. So when they reconstruct it, they have to build it to the single-family code. Yeah, so it's very difficult to do that. That's why we hardly ever see
I think
it.
that would not be cost effective at all, but
Yeah,
okay.
but it's allowable under the, so we have had a housing rehab program way back into the early 2000s. So again, some of the aspects of the report didn't recognize what we'd already been doing. So we've I think we've done 250 homes or something like that already. So
You're not
again, so these were the recommendations in the report. What we were trying to do then, okay, what have we done, if we have done anything regarding that specific recommendation? So here was another one, CARA. So it's hard. CARA has a waiting list. They basically do weatherization programs. And rather than have a housing rehab customer wait in line, we were just doing the weatherization as part of the rehab. So that way, I guess it freed up money in other places, but it was like, okay, we're going to put you on a waiting list for weatherization through the community action program. We may as well just do it as part. So we can do 11 homes a year that are, ours is a rehab program, but it's largely driven by weatherization. So CARA is still out there. They refer people to us. There's other things we could partner with them. Certainly, we've had suggestions about a youth build program where we can get high school kids and, folks from EVIT or whatever to start building houses, start partnering. That's a large, huge type undertaking. CARA would be the entity that could do that been around for a long time, whereas the city can't just staff up and go, get $1 million program and hire 3 or 4 people and start, getting high school kids and building garages and then houses and then, So that's kind of where that recommendation. So this workshop, we never really did a workshop to help folks on how they can improve their home. Does that mean we can't do it or shouldn't do it? It really morphed into, more of a financial, how do you get your finances in order so that you could go get a 3% loan, 3% down payment, assisted loan, or some sort of federally assisted loan. So it morphed into that. And the city continues to this day, not to this day, but recently to do some more of this kind of just financial, give folks some classes in how to manage their funds better so they don't become homeless, so they don't, they're not living paycheck to paycheck. So some of those things are going on. The newsletter has been around for a long time, but it also, again, as this one indicates, has some information on home maintenance. So again, incentive inclusive zoning, I think we have fairly inclusive zoning right now. We have many of our zoning districts allow manufactured homes. There's nothing, we have pretty small lot sizes, so one of the exclusionary zoning techniques is say, well, the smallest lot size is 12,500 square feet. Well, we don't do that here. As you know, you've approved lots of subdivisions where the lot sizes are
3,000.
Smaller
than that. So
Yeah.
that's typically what folks call is exclusionary zoning, where everything has to be 1.25 acres or half an acre. We don't do that. Again, because of where we're located, to do these low-income housing tax credits, those are federal tax credits that come through the state of Arizona to a developer, and those 2 properties, the crossings also back in the day had low-income housing tax credits applied. And then, Rudy, what's the name of the project over there on on Old West Highway and Royal Palm?
It was originally called Indian Summer.
Indian Summer. That was a tax credit project originally after the 15-year affordability period.
Indian Wells.
Indian Wells. You have to keep the units affordable for 15 years under these programs. In that particular case, the owner, it may have been sold, I think, and then the new owner said, no, we're not going to keep it for another 15 years as affordable. It went on the open market, and the rents are the rents.
The Crossings was another one.
The Crossings is one that still today, they've renewed their 15 years and getting another 15 years of affordable housing. The problem with going after these monies to do Apache Junction villas, they made 3 applications to the state because most of the incentives that the state gives out are if you have transit. If you have transit, you get like 30 points on your application. So we don't have transit, so it took them 3 stabs to try to get the 52 units, but then they went into a statewide pool. So there is a statewide pool where transit was not as big of a factor, and that's how they finally learned to go to that pool of money as opposed to go to
That's why it took them
What-
so long to develop.
I don't know why they made the first 2 applications. They
What
should have just started. Yeah.
constitutes transit?
Well, the state has an incentive. They understand the relationship between affordable housing and transit. So now you build a light rail system all the way to Gilbert Road, and then you want to incentivize redevelopment of some of the old parking lots, whatever, turn it into housing so that someone can hop on the light rail and go to work, or be part of Valley Metro. So if there's transit nearby, you got extra points to go through the Arizona Department of Housing program to try to attract these tax credits. So it's just, these tax credits are another way to help fund affordable housing. But, so we did get one. Now maybe there's probably a market out here for more, but then someone's probably going to have to apply to that statewide pool again for more units. So the program's been around, I think since 1986, when the federal tax law changed big time in 1986. That's where this low-income housing tax credit program got started. And so folks that want tax credits, Warren Buffett, whatever, they go and say, hey, put us in line, we'll buy some of these tax credits. So that was, again, on the housing. And then we had, back in the day, or even today, this quote, TOD, transit-oriented development, that's still, again, it makes sense. You want to put, where you don't have a car, you want to do transit that's along, or housing along a transit route. So we went into that. So again, I think we made some progress on this one. So by doing the active transportation plan, we said, you know, it is another form of transportation, biking and walking. How do we make that more available? Then, of course, there's these community recommendations, which I think the city has done as well as it can do. I think it's done a great job with the kind of transformation of the Community Development Corporation, and then cleaning up. I think we've done 5 neighborhood cleanups where we took 7 dumpsters into a neighborhood and filled them up on a Saturday, and we started trying to create some neighborhood organizations. It's difficult in a neighborhood where you have kind of a mix of housing. You know, a different kind of a city would have a more traditional neighborhood, where here we might have a whole bunch of different mix of housing, where we might have a mobile home park or an RV park, or along with conventional housing. So anyway, I kind of went on and on there, as I usually do. This is just an example. This was a house that a neighbor was complaining about. It is in one of our low-mod neighborhoods. The house is going to get bulldozed, but the neighbors kept complaining about it because there were vagrants living there. It smelled bad. And the city, through the judge and the CDC, went and kind of gave the property a haircut, cleaned it up so it wasn't, you know, it had been, no one lived there for 3 years, and the owner quit paying taxes. Eventually it went to a tax foreclosure sale, and now I think it's going to get scraped, and then there'll be a new home there, probably a manufactured home. So that was just, again, just a simple way to say that the city is doing something here and trying to improve neighborhoods anyway.
Madam Chair, another question. So, Larry, I have a neighbor down the street, and I think I understand correctly. He indicates that he was able to get funds from the city to do some upgrades on his house. And we're not talking about a house that's in disrepair. And it was simply by the city put a lien on the home.
Well, it's not that simple. You have to be low and moderate income. You have to live and own your own home for at least a year. And we go through a screening process to make sure you're income eligible. And then we go through the house and see what needs to be done. Maybe most of that was done was weatherization. Maybe it was, you know, windows, roof. But if
it was a roof and, yeah.
Yeah, so what we do, it's in the form of a lien. So it's a promissory, with a promissory note. And then it is forgivable the way we've set it up here, that depending on the loan amount, it's forgiven about $5,000 a year over, you know, so say it's $50,000, it takes you 10 years, and then you don't have to pay it back.
Is that something that's still available to folks that are of limited resources? I mean, that
Absolutely.
would qualify for?
We did 11 homes this year. We actually don't, we can't even apply for money right now because we don't have a client list. So we have to go through an effort right now to, with the law, our main way to find housing rehab customers was through the local papers. So now that we don't have weekly papers, we have monthly papers, we have online papers. So we're actually going to do a literature drop, if you will. We're going to do some targeted mailing in some of our neighborhoods, try to sort for where it is owner occupied, so that the tax bill goes to that physical address. Then more than likely it's owner occupied. So we're not just sending mailings to. So we actually in need right now of, you know, probably 20 applicants, whereby maybe 10, 12 of them might qualify. That way then we can apply through the Arizona Department of Housing for more of these capital HOME dollars. That's how we do the housing rehab program. So actually at this very minute we're finishing up one house under the current grant. The last grant was $275,000. So that's kind of the amount we've been getting every year. But the state doesn't give you any money unless you already have a built-in 10 to 12 list of folks.
Is there a ceiling on how much you would spend per house, or is it just the need?
Generally there is. It depends. It's 25 at the top that I've seen so far is 50.
Okay.
Yeah. And so then if you decide to sell, you got to pay that note off early. Right. So it's not like, so say you stay there 3 years, you may have forgiven 15. You have to pay off the balance. That balance goes back to the state, and the state loans it out again, so to speak. So each city is different. Some of them don't have forgivable loans. Some of them are just, you know, deferred interest. deferred payment loans, so you don't make any payments as long as you live, then when you sell the house, the loan gets paid off. So this is how way the city here runs it, but other cities run it differently where, again, they are deferred interest, deferred payment, and then the interest accrues. Then when you sell the house, the heirs don't get much. They got to pay off the loan and they got to pay the interest. So, but it's all HUD allows those various ways to set it up.
Do those funds come back to the city, or they just go back into the pool and then you have to reapply?
If you're a city over 50,000, if you're what's called an entitlement community with housing and urban development, the city recirculates those monies. They come back to the city, and the city recirculates them. Because we're not 50,000, we get the money. We get the federal money through the state. So we're not a block grant community. We go after the federal money through the state. When someone pays off their lien, the money goes back to the state, and then they put it in a pool and then give it to a community.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So you don't want any input from us or anything?
I think we got a lot of input.
Well,
Well, this wasn't really set for a recommendation. We can certainly let the council know what you said, your thoughts, what we may be focusing on next. We can certainly relay that to the council.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Director's report, or wait a minute, was there something? Information and reports, anything?
Nope.
No? Then we'll go on to director's report.
Director's report, we don't have anything. I'm just kidding. So I think we have one item, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Yes, we do.
but I have a question about that.
You do?
Yeah, I do, actually. If this person steps down as of October 31st, how is planning and zoning going to have any meetings?
We are, because the next meeting will be November 10th, and at that meeting, we will probably go through our election for chair and vice chair.
Yeah, but you won't have a quorum.
Yeah, we do. We have the council,
Oh, that's
The
right.
new appointed folks.
November 1st,
Yeah,
the new members come in.
okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I had forgot all about that. I thought, wait a minute,
No, you got to stay with that.
you're not
Yeah,
going to have a
stay.
quorum.
Yeah, you can
Okay,
Resign from council.
run.
yeah, I got to resign so the new people can come, okay.
So yes, we have a big evening planned where I think we're going to hopefully have a chair and a vice chair, and then we will go through our annual process of going through the Robert's Rules of Orders and the conflict of interest and the council, the behavioral policy, whatever
Don't
we
ruin
call
the
it.
surprise. All the fun stuff.
That'll be a hoot.
No, we're not. It all has to do
It
with,
all has to do, I'm honoring the chair's request here, so.
oh my God.
So what I found out here was that your chair has been on 4 committees throughout her career at the city, the Board of Adjustment, although probably the Board of Adjustment never met during those 2 years that you were, but we're still giving you credit for it. Tess was on the library board for 20 years, from 1998 to 2018. On the Parks and Recreation Commission for the same years, 1998 to 2018. And then the Planning and Zoning Commission, the record here says 2003, but you're telling us it's 2000.
I was 2000 when I
So
was
we're going to
appointed.
change that to 2000. And then that adds up to 63 years of
And
total
actually,
service, I think.
The library was till just last October 2019.
Okay,
too.
so now we're up to 65
Call you and Ray.
years. This is just
You're
test.
cheating me out of years there.
This is, I did not want to cheat
I
you out of
worked
any.
hard for all those years.
That doesn't count her, so 65 years on 4 boards and commissions. Though I want to deduct the 2 years on the Board of Adjustments, though, because you never had a meeting.
Never had a meeting.
Right. Well, with this plaque here, this was, remember we had dinner over at that place that you used to work at?
Yeah,
So we used to have an annual boards and commissions dinner, right?
yes.
And this was Mayor Insulaco giving Tess an award. At that time, I think it was 47 years was the
yeah.
cumulative total of her service. So we certainly appreciate her all her years of service, and now she's graduated, she's promoted to another 20 years on the council.
But you-
Or no,
you
65
missed
years.
the 18 years with the police department.
No, I was just getting there. Thanks for reminding me. So Tess,
Was that
Tess has also volunteered, I think, every Friday for 18 years with the, I think it's Victim Services over,
Well, victim services up and through 2011, and starting since 2010, I was with the detectives
detectives,
unit, the CID,
right?
putting together cases.
So I know Tess would appreciate a plaque, but a couple of us got together and we made a donation through the Friends of Apache Junction and did a donation to the police department in Tess's honor
Oh,
as part of the Friends.
thank you.
So, all right,
Yeah.
you're welcome. So we don't have a plaque or a presentation tonight, but we do very much appreciate your service and your leadership here at the Plan Commission. Rudy, you might want to say something because you've been here longer than me.
Just, it's on to the next great adventure at serving the city. You've been just an exemplary model of community service and community involvement, and we appreciate you very much and look forward to working with you in a different capacity. So the fun doesn't end yet.
No, not yet. And I want to just, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. No, sit down, sit down, sit down. And I want to thank, going clear back to 1998, ASU got me involved doing this because I had gone to ASU and taken the Certified Public Management course and got my CPM. And the last class, the last session of that is what they called a city simulated process of having a mayor and a city council and all of that. And then I remember sitting there reading the newspaper and I saw this vacancy and I said, oh, I'm going to be perfect for that because I just did this through ASU, right? And about 20 people applied for a vacancy on city council. And I have to thank one city council person who did the best thing that ever happened to me. He chewed me up because I wasn't qualified at that point. And I got to give credit where credit's due. He really did make it hard for me, but I took that as a positive thing, and I said, how do I do this? What do I have to do? Like everything, there's, make it happen. So I started attending planning and zoning meetings and city council meetings and reading and studying, and 2 years later I got appointed to, that year they appointed me to library board and parks and rec, and 2 years later I got on planning and zoning, and here I am 20 years later. So yeah, it's been a fun ride, and I appreciate everybody's help, and it's been good. Everybody should get involved with their city. So thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Can I share something? Thank you.
Peter wants to talk. Are you going to
May
let
I
him?
share something?
Yes, you
It's
can.
positive, Tess. It's not gonna, I'm not gonna chew you up or anything. My interest in planning and zoning was really stimulated or was encouraged by Tess. And she might not even realize that, but I was participating in the Citizens Leadership Institute, and we did a simulated planning and zoning application and stuff. And I was really taken by that. I thought that's something that I would like to be able to be involved with. So again, you had no idea. You didn't even know who I was. I was a nobody. But it was interesting because there was a process. The elements of that were like, that's something that would be very intriguing and very, it gives me an opportunity to learn more about the city. So I really have to credit Tess with having led that portion of the Leadership Institute. And so for those, if you haven't done the Leadership Institute, you really need to, because you learn a lot. And in that case, that's what made me want to jump on board. So you may be regretting it ever since you did that, but, you know.
Well, it's been a good ride, and we'll keep on going. So thank you.
Thank you.
And
Tess.
we'll move on to the selection of meeting dates, times, location, and purpose.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
for the last time, I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission hold a regular meeting on November 10th, 2020 at 7 p.m. in the City Council chambers located at 300 East Superstition Boulevard.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please, Rudy?
Commissioner Henshey,
Yes.
Vice Chair Heck,
Yes.
Commissioner McGraw,
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser.
Yes.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Okay, and for the last time, I will adjourn the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting at 7:54. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.